The wind carried a dry, restless hum across the open valley, brushing over sage and dust as if whispering a warning. Folks in town said the land could sense trouble before people ever noticed it. That morning, the sky held the uneasy look of something waiting to happen. Everyone at the holding pens felt it too. Even the horses were unsettled, hooves shifting, tails flicking in short, agitated snaps. Word had spread fast that the bureau men were struggling to load a wild Mustang unlike any they had dealt with before. They had dealt with hard ones in the past. They had handled stallions that could break a gate in half, mares that fought like storms, and colts that kicked fast as lightning. But this Mustang was something else. Older hands shook their heads and kept their distance. Newer hands pretended they were not nervous, yet every one of them stepped back the moment the horse's shadow stretched toward them. The Mustang stood inside the temporary corral at the far end of the yard. A long streak of dust ran along his side, the mark of a horse that had been running hard for years. His mane hung in tangled ropes. His eyes burned with a kind of fire that made people shift their weight and glance away. He was large, strong, and silent, which somehow made him more frightening than if he had charged. He studied every person who neared him the way a wolf watched strangers near its den. One of the agents wiped sweat from his brow and leaned on the rail while shaking his head. He had tried for hours to calm the Mustang, but each attempt ended with the animal rearing, slamming into the panels or sending a shock of fear through every person around. The horse did not want a rope on him. He did not want a gate closed behind him. He did not want anything some stranger told him to do. People gathered at the fence, curious and concerned. Farmers, riders, and ranch hands stood on tiptoe to get a good look. Some muttered that the horse was cursed. Others claimed he was simply too wild for any human hand. A few thought he had been wronged before and had learned not to trust. Most believed the agents would tire out before the horse ever cooled down. Just then, the pickup trucks rolled in, raising thin clouds behind their tires. A few folks stepped aside as two more officers climbed out with that stiff, official walk that said they meant business. The Mustang lifted his head high, ears pointing forward. The air thickened. Even the wind paused as though waiting for the next move. Attempts continued. They brought in stronger ropes and wider panels. They tried feed, soft words, and every trick anyone had learned from years of working with horses. None of it made a difference. The Mustang responded with the same fierce defiance. He would not be pulled. He would not be coaxed. He would not be cornered. Hours dragged on. People trickled away for water and shade, then drifted back, still drawn by the tension hanging over the yard. No one wanted to miss what might happen next. Some believed the animal would have to be left alone until nightfall. Others whispered that a tranquilizer might become the only option, though no one truly wanted to see that. They wanted to believe the horse could be handled through respect, not force. While all the commotion held everyone's attention, a single rider approached the yard from the dirt road beyond the feed shed. The rider was young, no more than a teenager, sitting straight in the saddle with quiet confidence. Her hat shaded most of her face, but the steady way she held the reins made a few workers glance twice. She guided her old bay mare with a soft touch, moving with the rhythm of someone raised around horses since childhood. Her arrival did not bring fanfare. She simply rode closer until she reached the fence line. She sat still for a moment, taking in the scene, watching the Mustang from afar. Something about her calm presence created a small shift around the yard. A couple of the older hands noticed first. They nudged each other and murmured under their breath. The agents, tired and dusty, straightened when they saw her dismount. She swung her leg over and stepped lightly onto the dirt. No hurry, no fear, only focus. She tied her mare to a post and walked to the corral where the officers were still arguing over the next step. None of them had ever seen her before. She looked much too young to offer any useful advice. Yet when she reached the rail, she rested her hands on the worn wood and studied the Mustang with a thoughtful quiet that made the nearest agent stop mid-sentence. The Mustang turned his head toward her, not sharply, not with the same anger he had shown the others. His ears twitched. His breathing slowed. The fire in his eyes did not disappear, but it changed. almost as though he was trying to understand why the girl had come. A few spectators noticed the shift. They watched her closely, waiting for her to move or speak. She did neither. She simply held the Mustang's gaze with a patience that felt older than her years. Dust swirled around her boots, and sunlight caught the small braid in her hair, but she did not waver. One of the agents walked up and asked what she thought she was doing, his voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. She answered softly that she just wanted to get a better look at the Mustang, nothing more. The agent opened his mouth to object, but something in her tone stopped him. He took a slow breath and stepped back. No one understood why, but it felt wrong to interrupt her. After a long, steady moment, she lifted her hand, not toward the Mustang, but toward the gate that led inside the pen. The agents exchanged uneasy looks. They had warned everyone not to enter the corral. They had said the Mustang could hurt someone without even trying, but the girl did not look reckless. She looked certain. When they hesitated, she repeated the small gesture toward the gate. Her hand did not shake. Her expression did not show pride or challenge. She simply seemed to know what she needed to do. A quiet spread across the yard, as if the land itself had taken a long breath. People leaned closer without meaning to. Even the horses in the nearby pens went still. At last, the gate latch clicked open. The girl stepped inside. The Mustang's muscles tightened. His head rose. His hooves stamped the ground in a short warning. A ripple of fear passed through the crowd. Someone whispered for the agents to pull her out. Another person gripped the rail with white knuckles. No one dared speak louder than that. She paused just inside the gate, letting the horse see every move she made. Her hands stayed at her sides. She breathed slow and deep, the kind of breathing that calmed her Murray on long trail rides. Dust settled around her feet as the Mustang watched every second with burning eyes. He snorted once, a sharp burst of air that made the crowd flinch. Still, she did not move closer. Not yet. The Mustang's ears flicked forward again. Something had shifted between them, though no one could explain it. Not fear, not anger. Something else that felt fragile and powerful at the same time, like a rope pulled tight but not yet strained. Then the girl took her first step. The yard went silent in one heartbeat. She took another step. The Mustang lowered his head by the smallest inch. And just as the tension grew unbearable, just as everyone leaned in to see what would happen next, the Mustang let out a deep, rumbling sound that no one could clearly understand. Whether it was a warning or a sign of trust, no one knew. The girl stepped again. And that was when everything changed. The Mustang's breath rolled out in slow bursts as the young girl took another careful step. The crowd stayed frozen, barely daring to blink. Everyone had seen horses calm before, but this was different. The air between the girl and the Mustang felt charged, like the ground itself was holding its breath. The horse shifted his weight, nostrils flaring as he studied her. She did not raise a hand or attempt to touch him. She simply allowed him to see her, to sense her calm the same way a wild creature reads the wind. A few of the older ranch hands whispered to each other. One said he had seen something like this once when he was young. Another claimed it was not skill at all, only luck. The younger workers kept their eyes fixed on the girl, unsure whether they were witnessing something dangerous or something rare. The agents stood tense, hands resting near ropes they were prepared to use if things went wrong. Yet none of them dared step inside and risk breaking whatever delicate balance was forming in the pen. The Mustang lowered his head a little more. It was not a full sign of trust, but it was enough to send a wave of surprise across the rail line. A few folks glanced around, wondering who the girl was and how she had learned to do this. She seemed too young to be so steady. Her boots were worn, her jeans dusty, and her shirt faded from sun, the kind of clothes that belonged to someone who worked with horses daily. Yet not one person recognized her face. She took another small step. The Mustang snorted again, dust spinning from the ground. She paused, letting him settle, before shifting slightly to the side rather than forward. It was a slow, quiet dance, the sort of movement that came from instinct rather than training. One of the farmers near the rail leaned toward his neighbor and whispered that the girl reminded him of an old hand he once knew, Someone who could gentle the toughest horses without laying a rope on them. The neighbor shrugged, saying there was something strange about the Mustang, too. No one could forget how he had fought the agents earlier in the day, slamming around the pen with thunder in his hooves. It was like he was made of pure, stubborn spirit. Yet now, that same spirit seemed locked on this one girl who dared enter his space with nothing but steady breath and soft steps. She studied the Mustang's movements carefully. Something about his posture told her he was tired, not just from the day's struggle, but from a longer story that none of these folks had seen. The Mustang's coat carried the marks of a horse that had been on his own for a long time. Scratches from brush, hardened muscle from long distances, and an alertness that belonged to an animal who had survived more than one close call. The girl had seen horses like him before, though not many. There was a certain language wild animals used, one that required patience and respect. She had learned it watching her grandfather work with older horses on quiet evenings when the sun sank low. He never hurried, he never forced. He always said a horse will tell you what he needs if you know how to listen. His voice came back to her now, steady as it had been back then. The Mustang shifted again, hooves brushing the dirt. His ears twitched toward the crowd, then back to the girl, as if torn between the instinct to flee and the curiosity pulling him toward her. She slowly crouched, lowering herself without bending forward. It was a tiny change, but it signaled to the Mustang that she did not intend to chase or pressure him. A soft murmur ran through the spectators. A few of the agents exchanged doubtful looks. They had seen people try all sorts of tactics that failed. What they were watching now made little sense to them. One of the officers whispered that the Mustang had been spotted weeks before on open land, keeping his distance from all riders. They had tried tracking him for days. Each time they got close, he bolted across rocky ground where no truck could follow. The only reason he was caught was because he wandered near a narrow canyon that boxed him in. Even then, he fought until 3 of the men were nearly thrown off their feet. Stories like that traveled fast. People in town had already been talking about him long before he arrived at the holding pens. Some swore the Mustang had once been part of a herd led by a stallion known for outrunning storms. Others said he had lost his herd and learned to survive on his own, growing stronger with each season. A few whispered that the Mustang avoided people because he had witnessed something bad. The truth was unclear, but the mystery only added to his fierce reputation. The girl took another breath and let it out slowly, her chest rising and falling with a calm rhythm. The Mustang noticed. His ears relaxed a fraction. It was not trust yet, but it was not rejection either. She shifted again, inching closer with patience that made even the restless observers begin to relax. Someone at the rail muttered that the agents should stop her before she got hurt. Another replied that stepping in now might break the moment entirely. The officers hesitated, torn between duty and the strange sense that something important was happening before their eyes. A gentle breeze brushed through the corral. The Mustang flicked his tail, eyes fixed on the girl. She could feel the tension in the air, the fine line between calm and danger. She knew better than to rush. Rushing could turn the Mustang wild again. Instead, she softened her posture, letting him see she was there without demands. She wanted to reach out, but she knew that would come later. For now, she needed to understand him, to watch the small signs that revealed his story. She noticed a faint scar along his flank. It was old but deep enough to show he had fought off something fierce in his past. His shoulders carried the look of a horse that had traveled long and far. His eyes held exhaustion hidden behind fire. The girl spoke her first quiet word, barely above the wind, no command, no direction. Just a gentle sound meant to let him hear her voice. The Mustang jerked his head slightly, surprised, but did not rear or pull away. His hooves pressed into the dirt and he swayed in place, muscles tight but not explosive. Her voice had always worked that way with animals. Not sweet or soft exactly, but steady, like something that rose upstream instead of drifting with it. Some people underestimated the power of a calm voice. She knew better. Her grandfather once said that steady words could carry farther than a loud shout. Animals listened to the heart more than the sound. The Mustang blinked slowly. His ears tilted forward again. His breathing changed, no longer rapid bursts but longer exhales. The crowd saw the change and murmured among themselves. Hope flickered through their unease. Maybe this girl truly understood something they did not. Maybe the Mustang sensed something in her that he had refused from everyone else. The agents watched with narrowed eyes. They were responsible for the Mustang's safety and the safety of everyone around. Letting the girl stay inside the pen went against every caution they had. Yet stepping in now seemed impossible. The Mustang might explode again. The girl might lose whatever fragile connection she had formed. The officers exchanged silent glances, unsure of how much longer they should allow this. The girl slid 1 foot forward, then placed her hand on her knee as she rose slowly to stand. Her movements were controlled, shaped by instinct and experience. She watched the Mustang with unwavering attention. He responded by lifting his head but not backing away. It was a small win, but a meaningful one. More whispers stirred among the crowd. People wondered about her background. They speculated whether she lived on a ranch or spent her days working with rescues. No one knew she had grown up on a small homestead miles from town, working with horses since she could barely hold a brush. They did not know that she had spent years learning how to read an animal's fear and guide it into calm. They did not know that she had come here not by accident, but because she had heard rumors about this Mustang and felt something pulling her toward him. The Mustang took a slow step toward her. Only one, but it sent a shock through the entire yard. People gasped softly. The agent stiffened. The girl kept her breath steady, careful not to break the moment. The Mustang lowered his head again, closer this time, though still guarded. His hooves scraped the ground, dust rose between them. A wave of heat shimmered from the earth. The girl stayed motionless, letting him choose the pace. She knew trust could not be forced. It had to be offered and accepted freely. Someone near the rail whispered that this was impossible. Horses like him did not soften, not in minutes, not even in hours. But the Mustang was changing. The fire in his eyes remained, but the wild edge had shifted into something quieter, something tangled with curiosity and memory. The girl's fingers twitched slightly at her side, aching to reach toward him, but she held still. The moment was too fragile. She waited, she listened, she let him think. The Mustang's breathing grew softer. His stance relaxed by the faintest margin. And then, just when it seemed he might take another step toward her, a distant sound echoed from the far side of the yard. Metal clanged hard against a trailer gate. The noise carried sharply across the open air, slicing through the quiet like a blade. The Mustang jolted, his muscles bunched tight. His head shot up, eyes wide with fresh alarm. The crowd tensed. The agents cursed under their breath. The girl froze, knowing the next few seconds would decide everything. The Mustang stomped the ground and swung his head with a rising tension that felt like a storm trying to break free, his ears pinned back. His nostrils flared, his body trembled between retreat and explosion. The girl whispered his name, the one she had chosen for him the moment she stepped through the gate, though she had never spoken it aloud until now. He heard her. He hesitated. For a heartbeat, the entire world seemed to hang on that tiny moment, balanced between calm and chaos, trust and fear, choice and instinct. No one could tell which way the Mustang would go. The Mustang's hesitation stretched long enough for the girl to take one careful breath. She knew she could not make a sudden move. She had seen horses react when fear snapped back into them, and she understood how thin the line was. The Mustang's hooves churned the dirt as he swung his head from the distant noise back to her, torn between flight and the strange calm she offered. The agents braced themselves. They expected him to leap into a full bolt around the pen, throwing dust high enough to blind anyone inside. A few people at the rail stepped back. Others leaned in closer, unable to look away. The officers glanced at each other, unsure if they should intervene or wait one more second. The girl kept still, her shoulders loose, her breath even. She whispered his name once more, soft enough that only he could hear. The Mustang snorted hard. It was not anger. It was not trust. It was confusion, a wild tug of instinct battling a pull he did not understand. He pawed the ground, sending another spray of dirt sideways. The girl watched for any sign he was about to charge or spin, but something steadied him. His weight shifted from panic into a tense stillness. His ears flicked between the noise and her voice. She lowered her head slightly, letting him see that she wasn't a threat. A slow hush fell over the yard as the Mustang's breathing eased. The tension did not vanish. It only changed shape, stretching into a deeper mystery. People realized there was more to this horse than wild habits. Something in his past held him like a chain. The agents had captured many Mustangs over the years, but none behaved quite like this one. Some said he had once belonged to someone before returning to the wild. Others believed he had been running from something for a long time. They did not know the half of it. The girl studied the Mustang with careful eyes. She saw hints of hurt underneath the wildness, marks that suggested more than rough land. There were small scars near his flank that did not come from branches. There were hesitations in his movements that did not belong to an untouched horse. She wondered who or what had made him wary of people to such a degree. That question dug into her thoughts as deeply as the mystery itself. Behind the rail, a woman stepped forward and asked an agent if the Mustang was going to be relocated to a training facility. The agent shrugged and said it depended on whether they could even load him. If not, other measures might be considered, though he avoided saying exactly what those measures were. The woman frowned and crossed her arms. Rumors already circled that certain Mustangs who could not be handled faced uncertain futures. The crowd knew this too, though no one dared say it outright. The girl heard the words and felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had not come here expecting to feel responsible for this Mustang. But something about him, something about the way he responded to her, felt like a weight she could not walk away from. She shifted her stance just enough to let him see she was still there, still steady. The Mustang's muscles quivered under his coat. His eyes locked on hers, searching for something he could not decipher. She kept her hands low and open. She wondered if he sensed her unease as well. She was not afraid of him, but she was afraid of what would happen to him if she failed. A man to her right whispered that the Mustang's herd might have been pushed out of their home range by new fencing. Another claimed that illegal roundups had split several herds across the region, leaving the strongest to survive alone. A third voice chimed in that ranch disputes over grazing rights had stirred old tensions again. Every explanation painted a different kind of trouble, and none of it gave a clear answer. The girl thought about the land stretching miles in every direction, hills rising like old backs bent under years of dust and wind. She had grown up riding through some of those valleys and could almost trace them in her mind. She wondered where the Mustang had run, what dangers he had escaped, and what he had lost. The people here saw only his stubbornness. She saw the story etched in his stance. A sudden shift in the air told her he was about to move. The Mustang stepped sideways, snorting as another distant clang echoed across the yard. His head rose high again, but this time he did not rear. He circled instead, moving around her with tight steps. The crowd tensed as he passed behind her, but she did not turn to follow him. She kept her gaze soft and forward, trusting that watching him too closely might widen the gap between them. The Mustang slowed his circling, then stopped at her side, angled slightly away. It was not an invitation, but it was not a rejection. She turned her head just enough to see his shoulder, noting how his breathing steadied again. She wondered if he recognized something familiar in her scent, or in the calm she brought with her. A man near the back of the crowd stepped forward, clearing his throat. He said he owned land near the canyon where the Mustang had been caught and had seen him before. He described how the horse never allowed riders near, yet sometimes watched from a distance as if waiting for someone. The man's words stirred new questions. Was the Mustang searching for something or someone? Had he once belonged to a person who knew him well? It was possible. Some Mustangs were descendants of old ranch horses that escaped years ago. Another worker added that the Mustang had once chased off a pack of coyotes circling a younger horse. That detail surprised the crowd. Wild horses looked after their own herd, but this Mustang had none. Why protect a horse he did not know? It hinted at a loyalty buried deep beneath caution, a trait formed by experience rather than nature alone. While the people talked, the girl kept her eyes on the Mustang. His ears shifted between the voices and her presence. He seemed uneasy, but not the violent kind of uneasy he had shown earlier. It was more like a creature caught between memories and instincts, standing on the edge of two worlds he did not understand. She wondered if he had been separated from a rider he once trusted. Someone who might have been taken away, leaving the horse wandering without answers. The thought tightened her chest. Horses remembered more than people realized. They carried memories that shaped their reactions for years. She took a slow step to the side, matching the angle of his stance. The Mustang flinched, but did not bolt. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. The girl kept her step small, respecting the distance he needed. She had learned long ago that forcing closeness created fear. Letting a horse choose gave them freedom to trust. A rustling sound came from the far end of the yard. Two men were arguing near a stack of panels, their voices rising sharply. The Mustang jerked his head toward the noise and tensed again. The girl stiffened slightly, worried that the sound might push him over the edge once more. She whispered his name again. The Mustang flicked an ear but stayed in place. One of the agents motioned for the men to quiet down. They stopped arguing, but the moment of disturbance had already settled into the Mustang's nerves. He shifted his weight, unsure whether he should stay or run. The girl stepped forward just slightly, offering a sense of direction without pressure. The Mustang did not move away. It was small progress, but progress still. The man who had seen the Mustang near the canyon spoke again, saying he believed the horse had been chased repeatedly by poachers who hunted wildlife along the ridge. That idea unsettled the crowd more than the earlier stories. If the Mustang had been fleeing real danger, it explained his deep mistrust. The girl felt a hot surge of anger rise in her chest. She knew there had been trouble near those parts before. People sometimes broke rules for profit, leaving animals to suffer the consequences. The Mustang pawed at the dirt again. His scars, his caution, his guarded movements all began to make sense in a darker light. She wondered how much hurt he carried and whether he had seen people do harm. She did not want to imagine the fear he might have lived through. The agents whispered among themselves. They talked about deadlines, transport schedules, and how much longer they could delay the loading. Their voices carried enough tension that the Mustang felt it too. The girl listened without turning. She knew what would happen if they ran out of time. The Mustang would be forced, and forcing him might break whatever trust he had begun to place in her. She felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. She had not come here expecting any of this. Yet now the Mustang stood next to her, trembling on the edge of trust, and she could not step away. She knew too much now. She had seen the story in his stance. She reached out her hand slowly, palm down, giving him time to decide if he would meet her halfway. The Mustang stared at her hand with wide eyes. His nostrils quivered. The crowd held its breath. His head dipped slightly, then rose again in hesitation. The girl did not push further. She held her hand steady, offering patience instead of pressure. The Mustang shifted his weight and took a cautious breath toward her palm. His muzzle hovered inches from her skin. Then a sudden shout burst from the far side of the yard as a gate slipped from someone's grip and slammed against the fence. The Mustang jumped back with a violent start. His hooves scraped the ground as he whipped around, tension exploding through his body. The girl spun just enough to keep him in her sight without making herself a target. People yelled for her to move, but she stayed rooted, knowing that running would worsen the panic. The Mustang reared halfway, then slammed his hooves down and swung toward the far panel. Dust erupted around him. The agents cursed, ready to intervene. The horse spun again, torn between fear and the connection he had almost accepted. The girl steadied her breath, calling his name louder than before. The Mustang froze mid-stride, eyes wild and wide, torn between fight and recognition. He stared at her, trembling. That moment held more weight than any before. It was the split between trust and fear, past and future, freedom and capture, and nothing about it was certain. The Mustang stood trembling, his front hooves dug deep into the dirt as if he meant to anchor himself to the ground. The girl felt her own breath catch in her chest. She kept her voice steady, calling his name again, softer this time, but with more weight behind it. The wind swept across the pen, lifting dust into the air as if the land itself sensed the tension building. The agents hovered near the rails, unsure whether to step in or hold back. Some had their ropes ready, but none wanted to be the one who pushed the Mustang over the edge. The crowd watched in tight silence. No one moved. Even the horses in the nearby pens had gone still, ears pointed toward the scene unfolding before them. The Mustang's chest rose and fell in rapid breaths. His eyes darted from the girl to the fence, then to the wide open sky beyond the yard. He looked like a creature divided between two truths. Freedom lay outside. Safety, maybe, stood right in front of him. But the past, whatever it held, pressed against him like an unseen hand. The girl stepped sideways, not forward, giving him space while staying in his sight. She kept her arms relaxed. Her heartbeat hammered, but she did not let it show. The Mustang flicked his ears at her movement. His muscles quivered, ready to burst into a run that would surely send bodies flying if he chose the wrong direction. Workers whispered behind the rail, wondering if the girl should be pulled out. One older hand muttered that if they tried to grab her now, the Mustang would lose whatever sliver of trust had begun forming. Another said the horse looked unpredictable enough that one wrong sound could set him off in any direction. A man near the back raised his voice, asking if the agents planned to tranquilize the Mustang before someone got hurt. The word hit the air like a sharp strike. The girl felt a cold ripple run through her spine. That was the last thing she wanted. She had seen what tranquilizers did to animals when used in panic. They could hurt them, break their spirits, or worse. She stared straight ahead, keeping her focus on the Mustang. She could not let fear win now. The Mustang heard the man's loud voice and jerked again, hooves sliding across loose dirt. His shoulder brushed the panel hard, rattling the metal. People gasped and stepped back. The girl held her ground. Her boots stayed planted, eyes fixed on the horse with a quiet determination that did not waver. She whispered again, letting her tone settle into the air like a soft rope meant to guide him back to calm. The Mustang's head swung toward her. His nostrils flared. His ears twitched. She could almost see the moment when memory tugged at him again. Something about her voice softened his stance, even in the middle of panic. Behind the rail, the agents were getting tense. One reached for the latch. Another shook his head, silently warning that opening the gate at the wrong moment could be worse. They argued in whispers, eyes darting between the Mustang and the girl. They were close to making a decision she would not like. The Mustang let out a low sound, somewhere between a snort and a groan. His body trembled. He stamped the ground once, twice, then backed away from the fence. He turned his head toward the girl again. His gaze held confusion, fear, and something deeper, almost like recognition. She softened her stance even more. Her arms stayed still. Her steps were tiny, calculated. She let him look at her the way a lost creature studies a path it does not trust yet. She wondered again who had once stood where she was standing now, who had spoken to him with that voice he remembered without understanding why. That question pressed harder into her thoughts as the Mustang shifted his weight back toward her. The crowd felt the change too. A woman near the front breathed out a long sigh. A rancher whispered that the Mustang was thinking again, not reacting. That tiny shift in the horse's mind felt like a spark of hope, but tension remained thick. The agents needed him loaded. The crowd expected an outcome. And the Mustang was still one wrong sound away from exploding. The girl knew she had to reach him before decisions were made without her. She took another slow step toward him. The Mustang lowered his head by an inch as if studying her carefully. Dust settled around his hooves. His tail flicked, not in irritation but in thought. His nostrils widened as he caught her scent again. She hoped it reminded him of something gentle, something safe, something that did not hurt. Every small sign mattered now. The way his ears angled toward her, the way his weight shifted back instead of forward, the way his breathing steadied by a faint margin. The girl felt each detail like a tremor under her skin. A young worker beside the agents pointed out that the sun was dropping lower. Shadows stretched long across the yard. Soon they would lose daylight. Soon the pressure to act would grow stronger. The girl felt a pulse of urgency rising, but she did not let it shape her movements. She stayed patient even as time slipped away. The Mustang's ears twitched again when she spoke. She kept her voice soft. Her words drifted between them, empty of command, heavy with calm intent. She had no magic. She only had experience and instinct, and she trusted both with everything she had. The Mustang took a half step toward her. It was small, but it stirred a wave through the crowd so sharp that a few hands grabbed the rail to steady themselves. The girl did not smile or react. She had learned long ago that animals responded to energy, and now was not the time to celebrate. She needed him to stay balanced, not overwhelmed. She lowered her hand again, palm down, offering without demanding. The Mustang eyed it. His muzzle lowered toward her, then pulled back in hesitation. A shout rang out from the gate near the far end of the yard. Someone had dropped a bucket, and the metal clatter cut through the air. The Mustang flinched so hard that the girl felt her heart drop. His muscles tensed, ready to bolt again. But instead of bursting into a run, he froze. The freeze was dangerous in its own way. A frozen horse could explode with more force than one already moving. The girl stepped slightly to the side, drawing his focus toward her and away from the noise. She whispered his name again, slow, steady, a sound shaped with trust. His ears flicked forward, his stance shifted. The agents watched with unblinking eyes, aware that the moment was hanging by a thread. Some of them were quietly impressed, though they hid it beneath tense expressions. They had never seen a Mustang pivot between panic and calm with such raw conflict. The girl leaned in slightly, keeping her feet grounded. She wanted him to see the choice he had. She wanted him to feel that the noise meant nothing compared to the safety she offered. She wanted him to know she would not harm him, no matter what he carried inside his past. The Mustang breathed out slowly. It was the first calm breath he had taken since the gate slammed earlier. Dust stirred around his muzzle. His shoulders sank by the faintest margin. His eyes softened, though caution still gleamed at the edges. She took another step. He did not retreat. A murmur ran through the crowd. Hope shimmered, sharp as a blade. Everything seemed to be aligning. Everything seemed possible. But then one of the agents called the girl's name sharply, as if warning her. She turned her head only an inch, enough to see what he meant. 2 trucks were pulling into the yard. Big ones, with reinforced trailers. The kind used when things had gone too far. The trailers rumbled to a stop. Dust billowed around the tires. Men stepped out, looking focused and impatient. These were handlers brought in for situations declared too risky. They had one job: load the horse no matter what. The Mustang felt the tension before he saw the trucks. His ears went rigid, his breath quickened. The girl saw the fear return in his stance and felt panic rise inside her chest. She looked at the agents. Their faces told her everything. Time had run out. The Mustang swung his head toward the trailers and jerked back. His hooves dug deep. His eyes filled with fire again, but this time the fire was mixed with something else. Pain, memories, a fear so old and sharp that it carved itself into the air. The girl stepped forward instinctively, trying to reach him before panic reclaimed him entirely. He stared at her, torn between the presence he trusted and the threat behind her. The handlers moved closer. The girl spoke again, louder now, fighting to cut through the rising chaos in the Mustang's mind. But the moment was slipping. The Mustang's chest heaved, his muscles tightened. His ears pinned, he was seconds away from choosing. And the whole yard braced for whatever storm he was about to unleash.